Welcome back to Solentha Stories. Let's fuel your day with some intense passion and non-stop excitement. Grab your gear, we're moving into the story now.
Amanda, my husband's lover, sat in my kitchen wearing my robe and sipping my coffee as if she owned the place. My husband calmly told me I could accept their new chapter, or leave with nothing. I smiled silent. In 48 hours they'd learn the truth. The house, cars, and accounts weren't ours. They were mine. My quiet $11 million empire. You can accept our new chapter or leave with nothing, Patrick said, his words measured and corporate, like he was terminating an underperforming employee. Amanda nodded from her perch at my kitchen counter, my robe slipping off one shoulder as she reached for her coffee, my coffee from my machine in my mug. The morning light caught her diamond earrings, probably gifts from my husband, bought with bonuses he thought made him rich. I smiled, genuinely smiled, because nothing was exactly what they'd both have in 48 hours when they discovered the truth about who really owned everything in this house. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why that smile was so genuine, you need to know about the life I'd been building while Patrick was busy being important. Before we continue, if you've ever been underestimated while quietly building your empire, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more women who need these stories of triumph. Every morning for 6 years, my alarm vibrated silently at 5 a.m. under my pillow. Patrick never knew. He'd sleep through earthquakes if they happened before his 7:30 alarm. While he dreamed whatever investment bankers dream about, probably spreadsheets and expensive whiskey, I'd slip into the spare bedroom he called my craft corner. My craft corner. That's what he told his colleagues when they asked about the packages that arrived daily at our house. Allison's got a little online thing, he'd say, making air quotes around thing, like it was something cute but ultimately meaningless. Keeps her busy while I'm at work. That Tuesday morning, before my world tilted on its axis, I'd open my laptop to see overnight orders totaling $47,000. My sustainable fashion line had exploded in Asia. My Vietnamese manufacturer was emailing about expanding capacity. My remote team of 12, spread across 6 countries, had launched our new collection while America slept. All of this managed from a room Patrick had never properly entered, too dismissive to be curious about what his wife did all day. The country club lunches were exercises in restraint. Every Thursday I'd sit with the investment wives, that's what we were, branded by our husbands' careers, and listen to them compete through proxy achievements. Richard just made senior partner, Margaret Whitfield announced last week, fingering a new tennis bracelet that probably cost more than most people's cars. How wonderful, I'd murmured into my overpriced soup, calculating that my morning's revenue exceeded Richard's entire monthly salary. These women measured worth in their husbands' bonuses and their kitchen renovations. They'd never understand the intoxicating power of building something from nothing, watching $100 days become $1,000 days, then $10,000 days. Patrick must be doing well, Margaret would probe, because everything was intelligence gathering at these lunches. That's a new bag. He treats me well, I'd say, not mentioning I'd bought the bag with money from business accounts Patrick didn't know existed. The $200 he transferred weekly as my allowance wouldn't cover the tax on that bag. The affair signs started 3 months ago. New cologne, Tom Ford, $400 a bottle. The man who complained when I bought organic groceries suddenly smelled like a luxury department store. Designer gym clothes replaced his decade-old college t-shirts. His phone, once carelessly left anywhere, became permanently attached to his hand. Then came Amanda's texts. Form corrections at 11 p.m. Saturday, emergency sessions when I was visiting my mother. Her name appearing in his phone with increasing frequency, like a slowly spreading stain. I screenshot everything. Not because I planned to confront him, confrontation would have been admitting defeat. I documented because information is power, and I'd learned long ago that power kept in reserve is power doubled. The Seattle trip should have been a celebration. 5 days of negotiations, endless meetings in glass towers, PowerPoints that made my eyes blur. But when that Nordstrom buyer signed the contract, $3.2 million for exclusive distribution rights, I felt my life divide into before and after. Patrick had texted twice during those 5 days. Once, "Where's the good coffee?" Like I was customer service for his morning routine. Second, "Amanda's organizing the home gym. You'll love it. Not the Pilates instructor or the trainer. Just Amanda, casual and familiar, already inserted into our domestic space like she belonged there. I'd stood in my Seattle hotel room, holding a contract worth more than Patrick would make in a decade, reading about Amanda organizing my home gym. The irony was so sharp it could have drawn blood. He was letting his mistress rearrange our house while his wife was closing deals that would shame his year-end bonus. The flight home had been strange. First class, paid with my corporate card, not the family credit card Patrick monitored, but the black Amex connected to my business accounts. I'd reviewed contracts on my laptop while other passengers slept. Approved marketing campaigns. Sent wire transfers to suppliers. Ran an empire from 30,000 feet while my husband texted his Pilates instructor about our home gym. My phone showed 5:17 a.m. when we started our descent. In 12 hours I'd walk into my kitchen to find Amanda wearing my anniversary robe. But right then, suspended between sky and ground, I was just another tired businesswoman heading home to a husband who didn't deserve her. Patrick's snoring had been the soundtrack to my success. Some mornings I'd pause in the doorway of our bedroom, laptop in hand, watching him sprawl across our California king bed. His mouth open, designer pajamas twisted, completely oblivious to the woman he'd married. The temptation to wake him with truth was sometimes overwhelming. "Honey," I'd imagine saying, "while you were dreaming about quarterly reports, I made your monthly salary before breakfast." But I never did. Because Patrick needed his illusions. Needed to be the provider, the success story, the one colleagues envied. My silence was a gift I gave him, though he'd never know it. A gift that would expire in exactly 48 hours. Sitting in my kitchen while Amanda wore my robe and drank my coffee, planning a future in a house built with money they didn't know existed. The last text from Marcus, my attorney, had come through as I waited for my luggage at baggage claim. "Everything's documented. Just say when." When turned out to be 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, standing in my own kitchen, watching my husband's mistress wear my anniversary gift like a trophy. The wheels of my suitcase caught on the threshold as I dragged it through the front door. My eyes burned from the red-eye flight, my shoulders ached from hauling laptop bags through 3 different airports, and all I wanted was silence and coffee. What I got was Amanda Novak, perched on my kitchen stool like she'd been waiting for a photographer. She didn't even look up from her phone. "Morning, Allison," she said, scrolling with one hand while the other brought my favorite mug to her lips. "Patrick said you'd be back today." The casual ownership in those 5 words hit me harder than finding them in bed together would have. This wasn't a guilty scramble or a shocked confrontation. This was choreographed comfort. She sat at my granite counter wearing my anniversary silk robe, the champagne one from Paris, stirring coffee with my grandmother's silver spoon, the one from her wedding set that survived 2 world wars and my parents' divorce. I stood in my own doorway like a delivery person waiting for a signature. "Where's Patrick?" My voice came out steady, which surprised me. "Getting dressed." She finally glanced up, and her eyes held the satisfaction of someone who'd already won a game I didn't know we were playing. "He'll be down in a minute. We need to talk." Not he needs to talk to you. The coffee maker was still gurgling, which meant they'd been up for at least 20 minutes. Long enough to shower together. Long enough to plan whatever this ambush was supposed to accomplish. The morning light streaming through my kitchen windows caught the silk of my robe where it draped across Amanda's chest, and I noticed she'd paired it with nothing underneath. A detail meant to be noticed, meant to establish territory. Patrick's footsteps on the stairs had their usual morning weight, but today they sounded like a countdown. He appeared in the doorway adjusting his tie, the blue Hermes I'd bought him for Christmas, and his face held the expression he wore for difficult client meetings. Professional. Detached. Already 3 moves ahead. "We need to discuss some changes," he said, using the voice he reserved for quarterly reports and investment projections. "Amanda and I have been seeing each other for some time now." Some time. Like it was a fiscal quarter worth noting. 6 months. Amanda supplied helpfully, setting down my mug with a little ceramic click that seemed to echo. "Since the Fletchers' New Year's party." The Fletchers' party. Where I'd left early with a migraine while Patrick stayed to network. I'd driven myself home, taken 2 pills, and fallen asleep to the sound of fireworks. He'd come home at 4 a.m. smelling like champagne and someone else's perfume. I'd blamed the catering. "We've decided to move forward together," Patrick continued, his hands clasped in front of him like he was delivering a presentation to investors. Amanda and I are starting a new chapter. A new chapter. Like our 8 years were just a rough draft worth discarding. The situation is actually quite simple, he said, and now his voice took on that particular tone of condescension he used with junior associates who didn't understand complex derivatives. You have 2 options. You can accept this arrangement. Amanda will be living here, we'll all coexist like civilized adults. Or you can leave. Leave, I repeated, tasting the word. With your things, of course, Amanda added generously, as if she was the lady of the house offering me a severance package. We're not unreasonable. Patrick nodded, pleased with her magnanimity. Exactly. We want to handle this maturely. No drama, no lengthy legal battles. Just a clean transition. And if I choose to leave? I asked, genuinely curious about their math. Then you leave with what you brought into the marriage, Patrick said simply. Your personal belongings, your clothes, your jewelry. The house and major assets would naturally remain here. Naturally. Because in Patrick's mind, his name on the mortgage meant ownership. Never mind that every payment came from accounts he'd never examined. Never mind that his major assets were purchased with money from a business he dismissed as a hobby. I'll need time to make arrangements, I said, walking to the coffee maker with measured steps. My hands stayed steady as I poured coffee into a mug. Not my favorite, Amanda had claimed that, and I added cream with the practiced calm of someone who wasn't watching their life get reorganized by committee. Of course, Patrick said, relief visible in the loosening of his shoulders. He'd expected tears probably. Shouting. The kind of emotional collapse that would justify their narrative of starting fresh. Take the time you need. 48 hours, I said, turning to face them with my coffee. I'll need 48 hours. Amanda stood up, my robe shifting as she moved, and did something that almost made me laugh. She walked over and patted my shoulder. Actually patted it like I was a dog who'd performed a trick correctly. Take all the time you need to pack, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. We know this is hard. Hard. Like I was being asked to accept a demotio. Not the demolition of my marriage by a woman wearing my anniversary gift. I looked at them both, Patrick in his power suit, Amanda in my robe, and smiled. Not the polite smile I wore at country clubs or the professional smile for business meetings. This was something different. Something that made Amanda's hand pause on my shoulder. 48 hours, I repeated. That should be more than enough. I walked out of my kitchen with my coffee and my suitcase, leaving them to their victory. Through the living room, past the art I'd bought with business funds, up the stairs that led to bedrooms they assumed they'd be sharing indefinitely. I could hear them behind me already discussing changes. Amanda's voice carried up the stairs, something about paint colors and new furniture arrangements. Let them plan. Let them measure and dream and redesign. They had 48 hours to enjoy the house they didn't own, to plan a future with money that wasn't theirs, to celebrate a victory they hadn't actually won. I closed the bedroom door. The guest bedroom, I couldn't face the master suite that smelled like Tom Ford and betrayal, and pulled out my phone. The screen showed 7:23 a.m. Marcus Lawson would be at his desk already. He'd been preparing for this call for 10 months, ever since I'd first noticed Patrick's late nights aligning with Amanda's Instagram posts from restaurants he claimed were client dinners. I stood at the window overlooking our backyard. My backyard, technically owned by Evergreen Holdings LC, and watched Patrick's car pull out of the driveway. Off to the office to brag to his colleagues about his upgraded relationship status, probably. Amanda's white Mercedes stayed in the visitor spot where she'd been parking it with increasing frequency. The phone rang once before Marcus picked up. It's happening? His voice was alert, ready. Yes. Timeline. 48 hours. They want me gone by Thursday morning. Perfect. I'll have everything ready. They won't know what hit them. Through the window I could see Amanda in the kitchen holding paint swatches up against my walls. She moved through my space with the confidence of someone who'd already changed the locks in her mind. My robe caught the morning light as she reached up, and I noticed she was wearing my wedding ring on a chain around her neck. Not her own jewelry. The one I'd left on the bathroom counter last night before my trip. 10 months of preparation activated with 2 words. 10 months of documenting, planning, structuring. 10 months of watching Patrick fall in love with someone else while I quietly ensured that when he pushed me off the cliff, I'd be the only one with a parachute. Marcus, I said, still watching Amanda redecorate my kitchen in her mind. Make sure Diana knows to start the extraction tonight. Already texted her. She's assembling the team. 48 hours. They thought they were giving me time to accept defeat, to pack my clothes and jewelry and leave with dignity. Instead, they'd given me exactly what I needed. Time to show them that everything they thought they'd won was never theirs to take. The guest bedroom door had barely closed behind me when I heard the garage door opening. Patrick leaving for work meant Amanda would have the house to herself, probably already mentally redecorating. I sat on the edge of the bed that had become my refuge these past few weeks, phone still warm from Marcus's call, when I remembered, Tuesday lunch with Mom. She'd be here in 4 hours, expecting our usual salad and gossip session. The thought of explaining this disaster made my stomach turn. But canceling would worry her more than the truth. I spent the morning in mechanical motion. Shower. Change into something that didn't smell like airplane. Start pulling files from my office. The important ones, the ones that proved ownership, documented growth, established the careful corporate structure that separated my business from my marriage. My hands moved automatically while my mind raced through calculations. 48 hours meant Diana would need to move tonight. The fulfillment inventory alone would take hours to relocate. At noon, Mom's Honda pulled into the driveway. I watched from the window as she got out, carrying her usual contribution. A batch of lemon bars she insisted on making even though we never ate them all. Her movements were spry for 71, but I noticed the slight pause when she saw Amanda's Mercedes in the visitor spot where it didn't belong during a workday. The front door opened before she could knock. Amanda stood there in yoga pants and a sports bra, looking like she'd just finished a workout in my home gym. "Oh," Mom said, her voice perfectly neutral. "Hello. You must be Allison's mother," Amanda said, stepping aside with the gracious air of a hostess. "I'm Amanda. Come in, please." The way she said it, like she was welcoming Mom into her home, made my hands clench. I came down the stairs quickly, intercepting them in the foyer. "Hi, Mom." I kissed her cheek, taking the container of lemon bars. Amanda was just leaving for the studio. "Actually, I'm reorganizing the kitchen," Amanda announced, oblivious to the tension. "Patrick mentioned you've been wanting to update the cabinet layout for years." Mom's eyes found mine, and in that look was 40 years of accumulated wisdom about men and the women who take them. "Who's your friend, dear?" she asked, though her tone said she already knew exactly who Amanda was. "Patrick's Pilates instructor," I said carefully. "Girlfriend," Amanda corrected with a smile that belonged on a cat near an empty bird cage. "Patrick and I are together now. Allison's moving out in a couple of days." The silence that followed could have choked someone. Mom set down her purse with the kind of deliberate calm that preceded explosions in my childhood. But instead of erupting, she turned to me with something worse than anger: disappointment. "Let's talk in your office," she said quietly. We climbed the stairs while Amanda returned to destroying my kitchen organization system. Mom closed the office door and sat in the chair where Patrick never sat, in the room he never entered, surrounded by the evidence of success he never acknowledged. "How long?" she asked. 6 months, apparently. Since New Year's. She nodded slowly, processing. "And Patrick gave me 48 hours to accept it or leave with nothing." "Nothing." She repeated the word like she was tasting something bitter. "Just like your father told me. Leave with nothing or stay and pretend." Her hands twisted in her lap. I stayed. 30 years of staying silent while he paraded them through our life. Secretary, tennis instructor, the woman from his book club. I smiled through it all because I had no money of my own, no career to fall back on, nothing but the promise that he'd provide. "Mom, I watched you build yourself smaller to fit Patrick's shadow," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "Watched you dim your light so his could shine brighter. But you're not me, Allison. You built something he can't take." She stood up, surveying my office with fresh eyes. The filing cabinets, the awards Patrick had never asked about, the framed first dollar from my business that he thought was cute. "Show me what you need to pack," she said. "The important things. The things that prove this is yours." We worked in focused silence, filling boxes with corporate documents, tax returns, the original LLC paperwork from before I'd even met Patrick. Mom's efficiency surprised me. She knew exactly which papers mattered, which contracts needed protecting. "Your grandmother left me money," she said suddenly, taping a box closed. $50,000 your father never knew about. She made me promise to use it if I ever got brave enough to leave. I never did. Used it for your college instead. Mom, I never knew. Because shame is silent, she said simply. But not anymore. Not for you. By 3 p.m., we'd packed 12 boxes of crucial documents. Mom helped me load them into her Honda. Patrick would never check her car. As we carried the last box, my phone rang. Kelly's name on the screen made my stomach drop. Patrick's assistant never called me. Mrs. Manning? Her voice was thick with tears. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Kelly, what's wrong? I've been booking them. The dinners, the hotels. 6 months of lying to you. He made me use his personal card so you wouldn't see the charges. Mom watched my face as Kelly's confession poured out. Every client emergency, every late meeting, every weekend conference. All carefully scheduled around my travel, my mother's visits, my predictable routines. He had me forward emails to Amanda about exit strategies, Kelly sobbed. Asset protection documents. They've been planning this since January. I have copies of everything. I'll send them now. Kelly, why are you telling me this? Because you were the only one who remembered my birthday. Because you sent flowers when my dad died. Because Patrick's a monster and you deserve to know exactly what kind. The emails flooded in, dozens of them. Patrick discussing hiding assets, moving money, protecting his bonuses from the inevitable divorce. Amanda suggesting they wait until after my Seattle trip to confront me, when I'd be tired and more manageable. Thank you, Kelly, I said quietly. This helps more than you know. Mom read over my shoulder, her jaw tightening with each email. They planned this like a hostile takeover. Yes, I agreed. But they forgot who taught me about hostile takeovers. That evening, I returned from Mom's house to find a domestic scene so perfect it could have been staged. Patrick and Amanda cooking together, music playing, wine breathing on the counter. She wore my Paris apron over designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's rent. He stirred something in my copper pots while she fed him tastes from a wooden spoon. We saved you a plate, Patrick said magnanimously, like he was doing me a favor in my own home. The risotto was perfect, I had to admit. Creamy, properly seasoned with just the right amount of wine. Amanda preened as I complimented her technique. I trained with a chef in Milan, she said, because of course she had. My phone buzzed against my leg. Diana confirming tonight's extraction. Marcus confirming tomorrow's documentation. Mom confirming the boxes were safe in her garage. I smiled and took another bite. This is delicious, I said truthfully. Every grain of rice tasted like vindication. Every sip of wine, from our anniversary collection I noticed, went down like liquid justice. They sat across from me planning their future, discussing paint colors and furniture arrangements, while my phone silently assembled their destruction. Patrick would sleep deeply tonight, satisfied with his victory. Amanda would dream in my bed, in my sheets, wearing my life like a costume. And at midnight, Diana would arrive with her team to begin the careful extraction of everything that mattered. 24 hours into my 48-hour countdown, and they still had no idea the war had already begun. And I was winning. Midnight had come and gone like a shift change at a hospital. Quiet, efficient, necessary. Diana and her team had worked through the darkness, extracting my business from the house with surgical precision. By sunrise, the only evidence of their presence was the empty spaces where inventory used to live and the faint tire tracks from unmarked vans on the driveway. I hadn't slept. Instead, I'd sat by the guest room window watching Diana's team work, occasionally going downstairs to unlock doors or disable alarms. Patrick and Amanda never stirred from the master bedroom. Why would they? They thought they'd already won. At 8:47 a.m. I was in the kitchen making coffee when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole I could see 3 men in matching blue uniforms standing beside a truck larger than Patrick's ego. Moving company, the lead man announced when I opened the door. We have a pickup scheduled for 9 a.m. Patrick appeared at the top of the stairs in a robe I didn't recognize. Burgundy silk, probably Amanda's gift. His hair stuck up at angles that would have been endearing years ago. Now it just made him look like what he was. A middle-aged man caught off guard. What's going on? His voice had that forced calm he used when trades went bad at work. Business equipment removal, I said, signing the paperwork on the mover's clipboard. Everything in the garage and pool house needs to go to the new facility. He descended the stairs slowly, his bare feet silent on the hardwood. What business equipment? The movers were already heading to the garage with dollies and blankets. I followed them, Patrick trailing behind me like a confused tourist. When the garage door rolled up, his sharp intake of breath was audible even over the morning birds. That's a heat press, he said, pointing at the industrial machine the movers were carefully wrapping. That cost $32,000, I finished. Plus shipping from Germany. The embroidery machine beside it was $40,000. The digital textile printer? $60,000. His face cycled through expressions like a slot machine trying to find the winning combination. Confusion, anger, then something new, the first genuine flicker of fear. This seems excessive for personal items, he stammered, watching them load equipment he'd walked past every day without seeing. Oh, these aren't personal. I checked items off the inventory list as movers wrapped them. This is all business equipment. Company property. Every serial number documented, every purchase traced to corporate accounts. You're being petty, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm being precise. There's a difference. Amanda appeared in the doorway wearing running clothes that probably cost more than most people's car payments. Her ponytail swung as she surveyed the scene, confidence radiating until she saw the scale of the operation. 4 pages of inventory. 3 trucks. A dozen movers. What is all this? She asked Patrick like he had answers for anything beyond portfolio management. Her hobby equipment, Patrick said, but even he heard how hollow it sounded watching professional movers handle machinery worth more than his annual bonus. At noon, a white Lexus pulled into the driveway, followed by a Honda with a baby on board sticker. Amanda's mother emerged from the Lexus carrying champagne, while her sister climbed out of the Honda with moving boxes. They'd come to celebrate Amanda's upgrade, to help her settle into her new life. They stopped mid-stride when they saw me directing movers who were now loading industrial printers and photography equipment worth more than both their cars combined. Mandy. Her mother's voice pitched high with confusion. Why is she taking the whole garage? Amanda's cheeks flushed. It's just her hobby stuff, Mom. Patrick said it wasn't worth anything. Her sister, clearly the smarter one, watched a mover carefully wrap a piece of equipment with a visible price tag. That hobby stuff has a $50,000 sticker, Mandy. It's probably fake, Amanda said quickly. You know how people exaggerate online. Mrs. Chin chose that moment to emerge from her garden, pruning shears in hand and decades of neighborhood gossip ready to deploy. She'd lived next door for 15 years and had opinions about everything from my roses to Patrick's parking. Finally getting rid of that useless man, she called out loud enough for the movers to pause. Patrick stood frozen in the doorway as she approached, her small frame carrying the authority of someone who'd raised 4 kids and feared nothing. Mrs. Chin, I started, but she waved me off. Saw that girl sneaking in for months, she announced, pointing her pruning shears at Amanda like an accusation. Using your spare key while you traveled. Sometimes stayed overnight when your car wasn't here. Patrick's face drained of color. Amanda's mother slowly turned to look at her daughter. Even took pictures once, Mrs. Chin continued, pulling a USB drive from her garden apron. That night in March when she showed up at 2 a.m. in that white dress. Very memorable. She pressed the drive into my hand, patted it twice, then looked directly at Patrick. Your mother would be ashamed, she said, then walked back to her garden. The silence stretched until Amanda's sister broke it. March. Wasn't that when you said you were at that meditation retreat? Let's discuss this inside, Amanda's mother said tightly, but Amanda was already spinning stories. She's obviously lying. This is all. The sound of Marcus's Tesla pulling up cut her off. My attorney emerged carrying a briefcase that looked expensive enough to fund a small startup. His suit was perfectly pressed despite the afternoon heat, and his expression held the satisfaction of someone about to reveal a winning hand. Mrs. Manning, he nodded to me, then surveyed the assembled crowd. Mr. Manning. Ms. Novak. I believe we need to discuss some documentation issues. What documentation? Patrick's voice had gone flat. Marcus set his briefcase on my dining table with ceremonial precision. The locks clicked open like a countdown. He spread papers across the surface. Deeds, incorporation documents, asset lists, bank statements, tax returns. Each one stamped, notarized, and absolutely legitimate. "Let's start with the house," Marcus said conversationally. "According to county records, this property is owned by Evergreen Holdings LLC, not by Mr. or Mrs. Manning personally." Patrick's hands shook as he picked up the deed. "That's impossible. We bought this house together." "Actually," Marcus pulled out another document, "you signed a quitclaim deed 3 years ago, transferring ownership to the LLC for tax purposes. You insisted it would save money on capital gains." "I never." "Your signature, notarized by Kelly Brennan, your assistant." Marcus pointed to the bottom of the page. "You signed 17 documents that day. Asked her to rush because you had a golf meeting." Amanda had gone very still. "Patrick, you said you owned everything." "The cars." Patrick's voice cracked. "Leased through Evergreen Holdings as fleet vehicles. The furniture. The art. Corporate assets purchased for business entertainment purposes. All documented, all legitimate." Amanda's mother picked up one of the papers, her reading glasses making her look like a judge reviewing evidence. "Patrick, this says the company is worth." She trailed off, mouth open. "Patrick." Amanda's voice had gone small. "You said she was just playing online. You said it was a hobby blog nobody read." Patrick stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language, his investment banker brain trying to find the loophole, the error, the thing that would make this all wrong. But Marcus's documentation was perfect. Because I'd learned from the best, from Patrick himself, every time he'd explained how the wealthy protected their assets, never knowing I was taking notes. Marcus reached into his briefcase one more time, and I knew what was coming before he even pulled out the folder. The valuation report. The one document that would transform Patrick's condescension into comprehension. "Before we discuss the prenuptial agreement," Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of carefully orchestrated revelation, "I believe Mr. Manning should understand the full scope of Evergreen Holdings assets." He slid the folder across the dining table. The cover bore the logo of Morrison and Associates, the valuation firm Patrick's own company used for their major acquisitions. Patrick recognized it immediately. His fingers hesitated before opening it. "Page 3, Marcus suggested helpfully. "The summary." Patrick flipped to the page. His eyes found the number at the bottom. Then moved back to the top of the page. Then to the number again. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. $11 million? The words came out strangled. Amanda's mother gasped. Amanda herself grabbed the report, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the paper as she read. "This is impossible," Patrick whispered. His investment banker brain was short-circuiting, trying to reconcile the number with his version of reality. "You never told me." "You never asked," I said simply. "Too busy laughing at my housewife hobby to notice I was out-earning you by millions. But you said it was a blog. A lifestyle blog about organic living or whatever." "It started as a blog. 6 years ago. Then came affiliate partnerships. Private label products. The subscription box service. The fashion line. The Nordstrom deal I just closed in Seattle while you were planning this ambush. $3.2 million. Amanda's phone, face up on the table, began exploding with notifications. Instagram. The story she'd posted this morning, champagne glasses, moving boxes, a caption about new chapters and upgrades, was backfiring spectacularly. She grabbed it, swiping frantically. The comments were pouring in faster than she could read them. I caught glimpses. Gold digger. Home wrecker. He doesn't even own the house. She played herself. Karma loading. 100% complete. No, 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 she muttered, trying to delete the post. But the internet never forgets. Screenshots were already circulating, shared in group chats and reposted with laughing emojis. Her follower count, displayed at the top of her profile, was dropping in real time. 23,000. 22,800. 22,500. Each refresh showed fewer people wanting to be associated with her carefully curated life. "Make it stop," she said to Patrick, shoving her phone at him like he could somehow control the internet. Patrick barely glanced at it. He was still staring at the valuation report, flipping through pages of revenue projections, asset lists, intellectual property valuations. His face had gone the color of old paper. The doorbell rang. Through the dining room window I could see a familiar BMW, David's car. Patrick's older brother, the successful one who'd never quite forgiven Patrick for squandering their parents' connections. Patrick lurched to his feet. David will sort this out. He's a contract lawyer. He'll find something wrong with all this. But when David walked in, his expression wasn't what Patrick expected. He surveyed the scene, the papers spread across the table, Amanda's mother clutching her pearls, Amanda herself looking like her world was dissolving, and Patrick standing there in his ridiculous burgundy robe. "Patrick called you?" I asked. Panicking, David confirmed. Something about illegal asset hiding and corporate fraud. He picked up one of the documents, scanning it with professional interest. "This is actually quite elegant structuring. Your attorney, Marcus Lawson," Marcus introduced himself. "I've heard of you. The Fitzgerald divorce, right? That was brilliant work." "David." Patrick's voice cracked. "You're supposed to be helping me." David set down the paper and looked at his younger brother with something between pity and satisfaction. "Help you with what, exactly? Getting back assets you never owned? Fighting a valuation you never bothered to investigate? She's my wife. That money is hers. I told you Allison was the real deal, Patrick. Watched her build that company while you preened at cocktail parties, bragging about your bonuses while she was quietly building an empire." He turned to me and his expression softened. "I'm sorry it came to this, Allison. You deserved better." "Whose side are you on?" Patrick demanded. "The side that's been right all along. You had a woman worth millions and you threw her away for..." He glanced at Amanda, whose phone was still pinging with brutal notifications. "This." Amanda's sister had been quiet until now, but she suddenly laughed. "Mandy, you told everyone you were marrying up. You said he was rich." "He is rich," Amanda protested. "His wife is rich," her mother corrected, setting down the valuation report. "He's just, what's the word? Middle management. Senior investment analyst," Patrick corrected weakly. "With a salary of?" David asked, though he clearly knew the answer. 160 base, Patrick admitted. "So roughly 1% of your wife's net worth," David calculated. "Congratulations, Patrick. You're a kept man who didn't even know he was being kept." That's when I pulled out the final document. The one Patrick had insisted on 8 years ago, when his $40,000 savings account made him feel like a tycoon. "Speaking of being kept," I said, sliding the prenuptial agreement across the table. "Remember this?" Patrick's face went white. He recognized his attorney's letterhead immediately. Marcus picked it up, reading with theatrical precision. Article 3, Premarital Assets. All business ventures, investments, or corporate entities established prior to the marriage shall remain the separate property of the establishing spouse. He flipped a page. Article 7, Future Business Ventures. Any business, investment vehicle, or corporate entity created during the marriage using separate funds shall remain separate property, including all derivatives, expansions, and subsidiary ventures. "But she started the business after we married," Patrick said desperately. "Started the LLC 6 months before you met," Marcus corrected. "The block that became the business was registered as intellectual property of that LLC from day one. Every expansion, every subsidiary, every asset purchased, all flowed through corporate structures that predated your marriage. You insisted on that prenup," I reminded Patrick. "Said you needed to protect your assets. Your cousin had just gone through that ugly divorce, remember? You made me sit through 3 meetings with your attorney while he explained why your savings needed protection." David actually laughed. "You protected yourself from her poverty while she was protecting herself from your discovery. That's almost poetic." Amanda stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I need air." But her escape was blocked by her mother, who grabbed her arm. "We're leaving, Amanda. Now." "But Mom." "Now." Her mother's voice could have frozen fire. "Before this gets worse." Amanda looked at Patrick, waiting for him to fight for her, to say something that would salvage this disaster. But Patrick was staring at the prenup like it was his own death certificate. "Patrick." Amanda's voice went up an octave. "I need to think," he muttered. Think about what? You said we were starting over. You said." "I said a lot of things." Patrick's voice was hollow. "Before I knew my wife was worth $11 million. The silence that followed was beautiful. Amanda's face cycled through disbelief, rage, and finally, understanding. She'd been played. Not by me, but by Patrick's assumptions, his arrogance, his absolute certainty that he was the successful one. "I'll take him to my place," David told me. "But only for a week. He needs to learn consequences." Patrick looked up at his brother, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked truly lost. "You're supposed to be my family." "Allison was your family," David replied. "And look how you treated her." David's BMW pulled out of the driveway at 4:17 p.m. Patrick slumped in the passenger seat like a deflated balloon. Amanda's family had left 10 minutes earlier, her mother's Lexus peeling out with enough force to leave tire marks on my pavement. The dining room still smelled like fear and expensive cologne. Marcus gathered his documents with the satisfaction of a chess master who just demonstrated a perfect checkmate. "The eviction notice will be posted tomorrow morning," he said. "They have 24 hours from notification to vacate corporate property." Tomorrow's Thursday, I realized. Exactly 48 hours from when this started. "Poetic timing," Marcus agreed, snapping his briefcase shut. "Diana will have a cleaning crew ready Friday morning. Professional deep clean, inventory check, and we'll change all the locks and security codes." The house felt different after everyone left. Not empty, liberated. Like it could finally breathe without Patrick's pretension filling every corner. I walked through rooms that would soon be mine alone, touching furniture he'd never appreciated, straightening art he'd never noticed. That night I slept in the guest room again. Not because I couldn't face the master bedroom, but because I wanted to give them one last night in what they thought was their bed. One last night before reality came knocking. Thursday morning arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that makes everything feel heavier than it should. I was sitting at the kitchen island with my laptop and coffee when I heard movement upstairs. Patrick's alarm, 7:30 a.m. sharp like always. The shower ran. Footsteps crossed the bedroom. Normal morning sounds that would never be normal again. He came downstairs first, dressed in his second-best suit. His best suit was still at the dry cleaners. A detail that shouldn't have mattered but somehow made everything more pathetic. He stopped when he saw the paper taped to the mirror by the coffee maker. "Notice to vacate corporate property," he read aloud. "Residents must remove all personal belongings within 24 hours of posting." His hand shook slightly as he pulled it down. "You're really doing this?" "The company is doing this," I corrected. "I'm just the CEO." Amanda appeared, wearing jeans and a Berkeley sweatshirt I'd never seen before. No designer athleisure. No carefully curated outfit. Just regular clothes that made her look younger, smaller, ordinary. "I need to call my landlord," she said to Patrick, not looking at me. "Maybe I can get my apartment back." She stepped outside with her phone. Through the window, I watched her pace the driveway, gesturing with one hand, clearly pleading. When she came back in, her face told the story. "He already rented it," she said flatly. "To a couple. They moved in yesterday." Patrick's phone rang. The ringtone he used for his office. Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries, because of course it was. He answered with his business voice, all false confidence and professional timbre. "Patrick Manning." I couldn't hear the other side, but I watched his face change. The color drained first, then his jaw tightened, then his free hand clenched into a fist. "That's not, I can explain." More silence. "Mr. Harrison, please." The call ended. Patrick stood there holding his phone like it might ring again, might take it all back. "They know," he said finally. "Someone sent them everything. The emails with Amanda from my work computer. The false client meetings. The hours I billed while I was..." He stopped looking at me. "That was you." "That was Kelly," I said. "Your assistant. The one you made lie for you. She forwarded everything to your managing partner yesterday." Her conscience finally won. "Clean out your desk," he repeated, the words hollow. 20 years at that firm. 20 years. They spent the morning packing in silence. Not together. That unity had evaporated with the money. Patrick filled suitcases with his suits, his watches, his collection of cufflinks that he thought made him important. Amanda packed her yoga clothes, her jewelry, the designer bags that suddenly looked like costume pieces from a play that had closed. At noon my mother arrived. Not to gloat but for something else. She carried a small velvet box that I recognized immediately. I went to the safety deposit box, she said, ignoring Patrick and Amanda completely. This belongs with you. Inside was my grandmother's ring. Art Deco platinum with a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. I'd given it up when Patrick proposed, because his 2-carat solitaire was more appropriate for an investment banker's wife. Your grandmother built her own fortune too, Mom said, loud enough for them to hear. Ran a seamstress business while your grandfather took credit. Employed 12 women during the Depression. Never put his name on anything. She helped me slide it onto my right hand. My left still bore Patrick's ring, though not for much longer. She'd be proud you didn't repeat history, Mom said, looking directly at Patrick. Some lessons take generations to learn. We sat at the kitchen island, drinking tea from the china Patrick always said was too fussy, while he and Amanda dragged suitcases downstairs. The rain had stopped, but everything still looked gray through the windows. One last thing, I said as they stood by the door with their belongings. Dinner. Tonight. Before you go. Amanda looked at Patrick. Patrick looked at the floor. Why? He asked. Closure, I said simply. They came back at 6. I'd set the dining room table, not with the good plates but with paper ones from the garage. The wine glasses were plastic. The napkins were from a takeout restaurant. I served them pasta from a box, sauce from a jar, bagged salad and store-bought breadsticks. The kind of meal you'd make when you didn't care, when you were just going through the motions. This is what you actually contributed to this household, I said, setting down their plates. Nothing of substance. Nothing of value. Just temporary convenience, easily replaced. Amanda pushed pasta around her plate, tears running down her cheeks. Patrick couldn't meet my eyes, just stared at the cheap food like it was a mirror showing him exactly what he was worth. I loved you, he said quietly. Once. You loved the idea of me, I corrected. The supporting role in your success story. When I became the lead, you couldn't handle it. They left at 7:30, walking to Patrick's car in silence. No dramatic exit. No final accusations. Just two people who'd gambled everything on an assumption and lost. The house was mine again. Only mine. I stood in my kitchen, my hand touching the copper pots Amanda had cooked with, the granite counter where she'd sat in my robe, the coffee maker that had started it all. 48 hours. That's all it had taken to dismantle their plans and reclaim my life. The prenup protected me, the business structure enriched me, but the patience, the quiet, careful patience of building something while they planned my disposal, that's what saved me. The doorbell at 8 a.m. Friday morning wasn't unexpected. Diana's cleaning crew had arrived exactly on schedule, and I watched from my bedroom window as they unloaded industrial vacuums and supplies. The house was mine again, legally and completely, but it still felt like a stage where someone else's drama had played out. My phone buzzed. Marcus. Documents were delivered to David's house an hour ago, he said. Patrick should be reading them now. The divorce filing. 200 pages of meticulously documented reality. Every asset catalogued, every ownership claim verified, every possible argument preemptively addressed. Marcus had built it like a fortress, impenetrable and absolute. David called me 20 minutes later. He's just sitting here staring at page 47, David said. The asset division summary. Page 47. Where it spelled out exactly what Patrick would receive. His personal savings of $38,000, his 401k worth about $90,000, his grandfather's watch collection and his wardrobe. Against what I kept, everything else. His attorney just left, David continued. Told him to take the offer. Said you're being more generous than any court would be. You're not asking for spousal support despite the income disparity. I don't want his money, I said. I want him gone. The attorney used different words. Something about no leverage, no assets and no case. Patrick threw a glass at the wall after he left. Across town, Amanda was having her own morning of revelations. The Pilates studio where she'd built her reputation as the instructor who could transform trophy wives into trophy bodies had called an emergency meeting. Kelly, Patrick's former assistant who'd become my unexpected ally, texted me updates. She joined the same studio after everything exploded, needing the distraction of exercise. Amanda just arrived, Kelly wrote. The parking lot is empty except for staff cars. Not good for a Friday morning. 20 minutes later, she's out. Crying. Box of stuff from her locker. Then, manager just posted on studio Instagram. Statement about maintaining professional standards and protecting our community values. Comments are brutal. Amanda had built her entire identity on being aspirational. The young, beautiful instructor who'd captured a successful banker. Her Instagram had been a masterclass in soft-focus morning routines and post-workout selfies with inspirational quotes about leveling up and knowing your worth. Now those same posts were being screenshot and mocked across local Facebook groups. Homewrecker Pilates Princess was trending in our suburban social media ecosystem. The wives she'd trained, who'd trusted her with their insecurities while she was secretly meeting their friend's husband, had turned into an army of digital destroyers. Her tearful response video, posted from her car in the studio parking lot, made things worse. She blamed jealous women and society's judgment, while mascara streaked down her cheeks. The comment section turned into a massacre. The video had 3,000 dislikes within an hour. Maybe focus on your own life instead of stealing others, read the top comment with 2,000 hearts. My phone rang. Diana. You need to hear this, she said. My forensic accounting team found something. I'd hired the forensic accountants to ensure Patrick couldn't claim any hidden assets, to verify that every dollar was accounted for. But they'd found something else entirely. Patrick's been skimming from client accounts, Diana said. Small amounts, 500 here, 1,000 there, but consistently for 2 years. He'd move money during complex trades, blame market volatility for discrepancies. Nearly 60,000 total. My stomach dropped. That's federal. Wire fraud technically. His firm will have to report it once they do their own audit, which they will after his termination. This isn't on you, Allison. This is his choice, his crime. Send everything to his firm's compliance department, I said. And copy the SE. I'm not protecting him anymore. The FBI visit to David's house happened at 6 p.m. I heard about it from Mrs. Chin, who'd heard from her daughter, who'd seen it on the evening news. 2 agents in dark suits, a warrant, and Patrick being walked to a black sedan while neighbors watched from their windows. David called me that night. They took his computers, his phones, everything, he said. He's not arrested yet, they're building the case. But his passport's been confiscated. How is he? Broken. David paused. He keeps saying this is your fault. That you orchestrated everything. I orchestrated nothing. I just stopped cleaning up his messes. Saturday morning, I stood in the empty dance studio that used to host Amanda's most exclusive classes. The owner, an older woman named Grace who'd built the business from nothing, walked me through the space. The whole building's for sale, Grace said. I'm retiring. Moving to Florida to be near my grandkids. How much? $3.8 million. It's not just the studio. There are 6 retail spaces for offices upstairs and a warehouse in back. I walked through the rooms, seeing possibility where Amanda had seen a kingdom. The mirrors that had reflected her carefully crafted image could reflect women building real businesses. The space where she'd gossiped about other people's marriages could host workshops on financial literacy. I'll take it, I said. Cash. 30-day close. Grace looked surprised. Don't you want to negotiate? No. But I have conditions. Current tenants get first right of refusal at their existing rates. No rent increases for 2 years. And the studio space gets converted to co-working specifically for women entrepreneurs. Amanda won't like that, Grace said carefully. Amanda doesn't get a vote anymore. The purchase went through quickly. Cash transactions always do. By the end of the month, renovation would begin. The studio where Amanda had played Queen Bee would become a hive of actual productivity. The irony was perfect. She'd have to watch from wherever she landed as her former domain transformed into something that actually empowered women instead of teaching them to compete for men's attention. I scheduled the grand opening for June 15th. What would have been our 9th anniversary? Patrick would probably be dealing with federal charges by then. Amanda would be trying to rebuild her follower count from 0. And I'd be cutting the ribbon on a space designed to ensure other women never had to depend on anyone else's money, anyone else's approval, anyone else's permission to build something meaningful. The building would be called the Graham Center after my grandmother. The woman who'd built her own fortune while her husband took credit. The woman whose ring I now wore as a reminder that some lessons take generations to learn, but only moments to teach. Marcus texted me that evening. Patrick signed the divorce papers. Uncontested. You're free. Free. Such a small word for such an enormous feeling. Freedom tasted like morning coffee without fear. No footsteps on the stairs to announce his mood. No careful calculations about which topics to avoid. Just silence that belonged to me in a house that was finally, legally, completely mine. 6 months had passed since Patrick signed those papers. 6 months since Amanda posted her last tearful video. 6 months of rebuilding what I'd never actually lost, just hidden. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, the prison's return address stark against the cream paper. Federal Correctional Institution, minimum security. Patrick's handwriting on my name, still bold despite everything. I opened it at my kitchen island, the same spot where everything had started. Allison, he wrote. They give us time to think here. Too much time probably. I understand now. I was so busy being impressive I never noticed you were building something impressive. I was the supporting character in your story, but I insisted on being the lead. That must have been exhausting for you. The letter went on, 2 pages of reflection that sounded like therapy speak mixed with genuine recognition. 18 months for embezzlement. His firm had pressed charges after the FBI investigation revealed the scope of his theft. $60,000 over 2 years, hidden in market volatility, stolen from people who'd trusted him. I didn't respond. But I didn't throw it away either. It went into the drawer with our wedding photos, the marriage certificate, the prenup that had saved me. Evidence of a life I'd outgrown rather than lost. A museum of who I used to be. 3 weeks later, Amanda stood in the lobby of my new headquarters. The Graham Center had been open for 4 months, bustling with women building businesses, sharing resources, creating networks Patrick would have called cute. She looked different. The designer athleisure was gone, replaced with regular jeans and a plain sweater. Her Instagram-perfect makeup had given way to something simpler. She looked younger, or maybe just more honest. "I'm not here to apologize again," she said when security called up to my office. "Can I have 5 minutes?" I met her in the lobby, not my office. "Some boundaries need to stay firm." "I want to learn," she said without preamble. "Not from you, I know that bridge is ash. But somewhere. How do I start over? How do I build something real instead of just performing it?" The old me would have sent her away. The bitter me would have enjoyed her struggle. But the woman I'd become, the one wearing my grandmother's ring and running an $11 million company, had learned that success wasn't a zero-sum game. I pulled out a business card from my wallet. Women's Entrepreneurship Foundation in Portland. They run a program for women starting over. Housing assistance, business training, mentorship. The director is tough but fair. Amanda took the card with both hands like it was precious. "Why?" "Because earned success lasts longer than stolen comfort," I said. "You want to build something? Start with foundation, not decoration." She nodded, tucked the card into her pocket. "I'm working at a juice bar now. Minimum wage. My mom won't speak to me. The internet destroyed me." She paused. "I destroyed me." "No," I corrected. "You participated in destroying me. The internet just returned the favor. The difference is I had something real to fall back on. Build that first." She left without dramatics, without tears. Just a quiet thank you, and footsteps fading toward whatever came next for her. Thanksgiving arrived with unusual warmth for November. My dining table, the one where Marcus had spread out proof of Patrick's ignorance, now hosted 12 women who'd helped me reclaim my life. My mother sat at my right, wearing a new dress she'd bought with money from selling her wedding ring. 50 years of wearing, reminder of compromise, she'd said. Time for something that fits who I am now. Diana sat across from her, laptop closed for once, laughing at Kelly's story about her first week as my operations manager. Kelly had transformed from Patrick's miserable assistant into someone who ran meetings with confidence, who caught errors before they became problems, who'd found her voice in the space Patrick had tried to silence. Mrs. Chin had brought her famous dumplings, refusing to share the recipe but teaching the scholarship recipients her folding technique. 6 young women, all building businesses through the foundation I'd started, all learning that success didn't require permission or marriage or someone else's approval. To building instead of breaking, Diana raised her champagne glass. Dom Perignon, because we could afford it now without justification. To women who warned us, my mother added, looking at me. To second chances earned, not given, Kelly said, and I knew she meant her own as much as anyone's. To empty chairs that become opportunities, I said, gesturing to the seat we'd left open. Not for Patrick's memory but for whoever would need it next. The champagne tasted like victory aged properly. Not the sharp triumph of revenge but the smooth satisfaction of success built on solid ground. Later, after everyone left, I sat in my kitchen as dawn approached. 5 a.m. my usual time. But now I didn't slip quietly to a spare room. Now I opened my laptop at my own island in my own house, reviewing my own empire. The gardens outside bloomed with intentional design. I'd hired a landscape architect who understood that beauty could be both structured and wild. The walls displayed awards: Entrepreneur of the Year, Sustainable Business Excellence, Women in Leadership Champion. The silence wasn't empty, it was full of possibility. My phone buzzed with overnight developments. Orders from Japan. A partnership proposal from a European distributor. A speaking request from Stanford Business School. An interview request from a magazine that had once featured Patrick as a young leader to watch. I drafted responses while sipping coffee from my grandmother's china, wearing a silk robe I'd bought myself in celebration of the Nordstrom deal. Not a gift from anyone, not a symbol of someone else's success, but my own choice for my own comfort. The sunrise painted my kitchen golden, the same light that had illuminated Amanda's betrayal, now warming my solitary morning. But solitary didn't mean lonely. It meant complete. Whole. Uncompromised. My phone rang. Diana, early as always. The quarterly numbers are in, she said. Want to guess? Surprise me. 14.3 million valuation. The Graham Center is already profitable. The foundation has funded 22 businesses. And Patrick's old firm wants to hire us as consultants for their new sustainability initiative. I laughed, really laughed for the first time in months. Not at Patrick's expense but at the beautiful irony of it all. Tell them yes, I said. But our consultancy rates are non-negotiable. The sunrise had become full daylight. Another morning in my life, my house, my business, my future. No longer building in shadows or hiding success to protect someone else's ego. The empire wasn't just striking back anymore. It had won. And I was just getting started.